Right now, off the coast of Iran, the largest military grouping since the American invasion of Iraq in 2003 is assembling. 40,000 soldiers, 500 aircraft, and 16 warships, including the most powerful aircraft carrier in the world, which recently took part in an operation to capture the president of Venezuela.
We will either make a deal or we will get a deal, one way or another.
All of this is happening because the United States does not want its main enemy in the Middle East to possess nuclear weapons.
They cannot have nuclear weapons. It's that simple.
But here's the paradox. The president of Iran insists that there are no nuclear weapons in the country at all.
If they truly want Iran not to have nuclear weapons, we are ready to accept any verification measures they require.
This looming war has been brewing for decades, and in this video, I'll explain why the United States issued an ultimatum to Iran and now, why a peaceful deal is practically impossible, and whether this conflict could lead to World War III. Let's begin. Iran became an enemy of the United States on April 7, 1980, when after the Islamic Revolution, Iranians took members of the American embassy in Tehran hostage. In response, the U.S. imposed the toughest sanctions the country had faced at that time. Over nearly 50 years of isolation, Iran did not surrender. The country found allies in Russia and China. For example, China became the main buyer of Iranian oil. It accounts for 80% of Iran's exports. Iran sells sanctioned fuel, for which it holds the world's fourth largest reserves, and China gladly buys this oil at massive discounts. To Russia, Iran sells drones and technology for producing strike UAVs, and does so very successfully. Since the end of 2021, the country has earned more than $4 billion from this. Meanwhile, both allies are planning trade routes through strategically located Iran. China is building the One Belt, One Road transport corridor that will connect it with Europe. After the United States launched a trade war against China, Beijing needed new markets. Europe's wealthy consumer market is a perfect alternative. The Chinese route will connect western and eastern parts of Iran, and the country will profit from transit revenues. Everyone benefits. The north-south connection will be ensured by Russia's trade corridor known as North-South. It runs from St. Petersburg to Mumbai and allows Russia to trade directly with India. Russia and Iran are also linked by peaceful nuclear cooperation. In 1974, construction of Iran's first nuclear power plant began. The project was originally awarded to Germany. However, after the Islamic Revolution, Germany joined U.S. sanctions and the construction was frozen. Iran always dreamed of nuclear energy, and in 1992 turned to Russia for help, since there was no one else willing. Russia was not deterred by Iran's status as a U.S. outcast. Moreover, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia's nuclear industry was struggling, and this contract became a lifeline. Russia completed the project and officially handed over the nuclear power plant to Iran in 2016. However, Americans believe it did not stop with peaceful nuclear energy and demand that Iran completely abandon nuclear technologies. Iran's foreign minister responded, "As a sovereign nation, we have the full right to decide for ourselves." For Iran, possession of nuclear technology is a red line, a demand it will never accept, even if U.S. troops stand at its borders. The world has seen a similar situation before. In 2003, when under the same pretext of eliminating weapons of mass destruction, the United States and its allies invaded Iraq. Saddam Hussein's regime fell, but no WMDs were ever found. Iran understands that this is not only about nuclear weapons, but about eliminating a major regional rival under any convenient pretext. That is why Iran will never renounce the option of developing a nuclear bomb, because only its possession guarantees deterrence against the United States. This is why Washington is in a hurry before Iran acquires a nuclear joker card. But the nuclear issue is not the only item on the agenda. The second U.S. demand is to limit the range and number of Iranian missiles. Iran ranks among the top 5 countries in missile technology, something demonstrated in the Iran-Israel conflict in June 2025.
They started the war, but after 12 days they asked for a ceasefire, an unconditional ceasefire. Why? Because they could not defend themselves against our missiles.
Today, these missiles are Iran's main trump card. Nearly every U.S. military base in the Middle East, in Iraq, Israel, Oman, and the UAE, falls within range of Iranian ballistic missiles. Iran reportedly possesses more than 3,000 of them.
Since our missiles cannot reach American soil, obviously we must do something else. We must strike U.S. bases in the region.
As long as Iran has missiles, it has deterrence. But as long as it has missiles, the United States and its allies cannot feel safe in the region. There's another powerful card, the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil passes through this bottleneck, from Saudi Arabia and Iraq to China, India, Europe, and even the U.S. Iran has previously threatened to block the strait, which always triggered oil price spikes and economic panic. In a war with the U.S., Iran would likely mine the strait immediately. Iranian missiles could target any vessel. Right now, naval exercises involving Iran, Russia, and China are taking place near the strait, potentially a deterrent signal to Washington. The third U.S. demand is that Iran stop supporting proxy groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. These groups attack U.S. interests and allies across Iraq, Syria, Israel, and Yemen. Through this so-called axis of resistance, Iran exports its Islamic revolution and seeks to become the dominant force in the Middle East. However, supporting them has become difficult due to Iran's internal crisis. To buy $1 US, over 1 million Iranian rials are needed. In December 2025, the rial was twice as strong. Inflation near 40% caused severe devaluation. Public trust collapsed. Mass protests erupted. Over 3,000 people were reportedly killed. To prevent unrest from spreading, authorities even shut down the internet. There could be no worse time for external pressure. So, can Iran really withstand the U.S. and its allies? Let's consider possible scenarios. First scenario, limited strikes on nuclear and military facilities. In 2025, the U.S. bombed Iranian targets while backing Israel. Iran retaliated against a U.S. airbase in Qatar. 2 days later, a ceasefire was reached. If pattern repeats, U.S. bases in the region will be at serious risk. Second scenario, full-scale war involving Israel. Israel would likely agree. Iran is its main threat. Iran supports Hamas and openly calls Israel a cancerous tumor in the region. A full war would pit the world's strongest military alliance against Iran, ranked 16th globally in military power. However, it is unlikely that President Trump, who brands himself as a president of peace, wants his legacy tied to a massive Middle Eastern war. Third scenario, regime change. Instead of bombing cities, the U.S. could attempt to capture key leaders, including Iran's president and supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei, and support the opposition. The U.S. recently conducted a similar operation in Venezuela, but this time the stakes are higher. Russia is focused on Ukraine. China's priority is Taiwan. Neither is likely to send troops to Iran, but both could provide weapons and expertise. Russia could benefit from rising oil prices if Iranian exports collapse. China would dislike expensive oil, but a U.S. distraction in the Middle East could provide an opportunity regarding Taiwan. Washington understands all of this. That is why the probability of a full-scale war remains low. The risks are enormous, and in the long run, the Iranian regime faces its own internal challenges. I hope this helped you understand why the U.S. and Iran are clashing now and why World War III is unlikely. See you next time.